Okay, so we're back now and we are about to cut our mat for the image. I just changed these blades out on this mat cutter a couple weeks ago for some other prints, and so I'm not gonna change those out, but you know, you might want to, especially if you're cutting a lot. Let's see, we've got our foam board backer here, and Charlie has some archival mat board over here for the front. So because you know, when you make these by yourself from scratch, it's really important that you have a nice snug fit with your plexiglass. So because it is so snug and it seems to be pretty much perfect, we could go a little bit smaller if anything. I'm just going to cut this to size and use the plexiglass as a little template. That's the line up.
There we go.
And so I'm just gonna mark. I'm probably gonna cut like within these marks so that it's not bigger. I want the mat board to be slightly smaller than this. So it should be good. Get that out of the way. And this is a professional mat cutter here, and it has two blade types. So I'm going to show you the first one. So I can fit a full sheet of mat board in this lengthwise. It's, I think, 40 inches long, and your standard mat size is 30 by 40. Check it, you know, don't trust those measurements. You always want to check them if you're matting something. So let's see. This is the straight cut right here, and this is a beveled cut. Now this height, you can change the height on this right here by these little set pins. I don't usually use the set pins for this model. There's other models where you can just flip a switch and it's really easy to extend the blade or retract the blade. And we just want to make sure that that blade is out far enough to cut all the way through mat board, because through foam board, because foam board is slightly thicker than mat board. And so if you have the settings wrong, it might not cut all the way through cleanly. So I'm just gonna loosen this and pull that out a little bit and tighten that back up. A little bit of pressure here. I've lined everything up, and I want to go inside of those lines just slightly so that we're a little bit smaller than the plexiglass. And it locks into place, and I just pull back, and it's a nice cut. I'm going to leave it at that width for now and just rotate.
Oh, you already measured that?
Yep, all measured. Again, slightly smaller. Pull that pin to, you can see when it goes down, you pull that pin to get it back.
Good thing
And
your
usually-
GoPro wasn't near the edge.
What's that?
Good thing your GoPro wasn't near the edge.
Yeah, I know. And then we'll check it against this. And
Seems a little bigger on my end.
it actually is, yeah. Let's rotate this. It'll just be the rotation. That's fine. We can always cut, we won't have to cut anything. That's good. It's pretty much exact.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll take this again, and you want to grab the mat board.
This is where that was marked on.
Yeah, so we need to determine the front and the back. So this is Museum Rising board. It's 100% archival. You want to just inspect it, look for any dings, and sometimes you might be able to just take a kneaded eraser and get out any little finger smudges or anything like that, if you have any.
I think it's just off. I don't know what it is. Oh, it's not. Ah, okay, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
That might have been from my car. My car was red.
Mm.
That's the only thing I could really think of.
Got a little bit over here too.
Or I might have bought it like that.
But, I mean, is this the front? Are we even
I think
looking
this
at
is the front because there's stickers on the other side.
Okay.
Or we don't need the whole thing for this at least.
Let's see. Got that. See this line right here? A little bit of it. That's going to be on the interior of the cut. So it might not affect it at all. We could probably avoid that corner altogether. Okay, that looks good. So you want clean hands and a clean space. That's why, you know, we've got this paper down, and, you know, I did wipe off everything before we started getting this stuff out. But you really want to make sure you have a clean space to do this. Not a lot of dust if you can help it. Okay, so this is the front, and I'm going to use this bottom corner as a reference. If you have other dings in your mat board, you want to try to avoid those. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to use this side as this corner as the corner that I use as a reference. Let me get this out. So you always want to be doing marks on the back side of your mat board. And I'm going to try and make this a little smaller this time. Didn't quite work out last time. So, yep, that's good. And there's no need to draw all the way around stuff. That's a good habit to break if you're cutting paper. Never trace out your templates on your paper. Just make small marks and cut from there. Okay, so this is going to be 25 by 30 altogether. And I'm going to use that straight cut again for this. Trying to go inside the line slightly. And now I'm going to retract that blade just a little bit.
Is any of this in the shot? Kind of far away.
I don't know. Get the shot. Okay. And I just butt my hip up against it. You want to make sure you cut all the way through before you start moving your plexiglass or your mat board. So we'll do this one. And never buy just enough to get by. You want to get in the habit of purchasing a little bit of extra of everything that you're using in case you make a mistake.
And then if you don't, you have it for later.
Yeah. And there's always that rule of thumb, you know, measure twice, cut once. Okay. So now this is still the back side. So we're going to transfer over here again. And we need to measure. You want to hold that?
Okay.
Yep. So the way that we measured this out, if you remember, we measured the image and then we measured about a 1/2 inch on both sides all the way around. So we added 1 to each of those dimensions. So we came up with the number 19 by 24, and that's the image size, and that's the size of our window. So the window is going to be 19 by 24. And that counts for when we add 6, that's 3 plus 3. That's how we get this number 25, from 19 to 25, because we're adding 6 for all sides of the mat. So we do the same with this number, and that's why we have 30. But it makes it nice for this because all I have to do is measure in 3 inches. Now, if I was buying if I had an image and I just bought a store-bought frame and it was the closest thing that I got, then I might not be able to do this. I might end up with some weird number that is like a fraction because my image might not fit quite right. Oops. Let's measure 4, 3, 3. So some of my math changes depending on what I'm doing. When I'm making it, it's always going to be the same, so I can always just add 3 and then measure in 3 inches to get my window. But with a store-bought one, say I buy a 18 by 24 inch frame and my dimensions are a little bit off, I might not have 3 inches all the way around. I might have 2 inches or 2 inches all the way around, except for the bottom I need to add an inch. So there are some things that happen in relation to that. So you can see those are really light marks that I make. And then because this is the back side, I do want to go all the way across. This is a 6B pencil. I should be using a 6B. I thought it was a 4H.
Oh, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, you probably could have just like half erased it.
It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt it at all. Okay. And the reason I do this is because I've made mistakes in the past, and this is an easy way to check if your print is going to fit before you cut it. Because once you cut it, you can't go back. And you do notice a little fingerprint here. I don't know if that's oil. Just want to get that off.
Oh, do you just erase on stuff like that on the back side so it doesn't get on the print?
Yeah, but it's not a big deal, but
No, I saw you erase stuff on the back side, but no one's gonna see it. But I'm like, oh, it gets on the print.
Yeah, so at this point I would take my print and lay it across this and just check for these little corners. And usually you can kind of see the lines through a little bit, but you just want to line it up and make sure everything's going to fit within the window here.
Should we get the print?
Nah, it's downstairs.
Okay.
I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, me too.
Move this over, and we're going to cut the window now. Now, it's important to know that I'm using this blade now and I'm cutting the interior bevel cut. So this is the back of the mat board, and I want the bevel to go this way. So the bevel will be facing pointing inward towards the artwork. If I accidentally do this and cut my bevel on this side, then it's going to be backwards, and the interior, there's going to be a little shadow, and we really don't want that. It's going to look weird. So you just want to make sure when you're doing your bevel cuts that the excess of the mat board is on your right hand side. And now I'm going to be using these little, I guess I'm going to get a little closer here, these little guides right here to help me determine where I drop mine, because this is going in at an angle, but it's also on a pivot. So that cut is going to come down slightly past this mark. So that's why I line up my line with the green mark here. And on the other side of the mat board, it should be very close to that corner. So I'm going to start the cut. And then I'm going to stop just past the line on the other side, and you'll see so like green is go, red is stop, so you want to stop on that line. And I'm gonna just do that again, just to make sure that I got all the way through the mat. It looks pretty good. Sometimes it doesn't go all the way through, and there's little clingy parts, and sometimes if that happens, you just have to get a razor blade and cut it by hand.
Can you do all this bevel stuff on the mat board if you're doing it without this machine thing?
Yeah, you can buy a handheld one that is just this part,
Okay.
and then use a ruler. I have issues with that one, with this part, getting it the start,
Ah.
and I just never seem to be able to get a clean cut.
How much
where-
is one of these things?
They're expensive.
That's what I was thinking.
They're close to $500.
Ooh. That's painful.
Yeah. You can get a mid-range one for probably 150.
Oh, that's not bad.
But I mean, when you're using Museum Rising
Uh-huh.
mat board, it's solid. So there's no the same material that's on the front and the back is in the middle,
Oh, okay.
and so
So-
it's not like a sheet of Crescent mat board.
Well, I think this is Crescent mat board, but I see we might.
Well, it would be like the Crescent, like, consumer version of
Oh,
the
gotcha,
mat board.
gotcha.
This isn't. I think this is better. Where it would have a acid-free paper on the front, and then an acid-free paper on the back, but the middle is just alpha cellulose, which is just pulp, wood pulp. And so they claim it's acid-free, but it's really not.
Like, where you see it is acid free, but the acid can leach through that middle layer.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And the most common thing that happens is people will forget what they're doing and just cut all the way through.
Ooh.
So you don't want to do that.
Now, if I wanted to use that part we cut out as a mat board for something else, but I have to cut the edges again so it's like straight.
Not necessarily. Because this is going to be behind.
Because it's the
wood
back side.
Or the frame. No, this is the front side.
Oh, this is the front side?
Yep. Oh wait, is it the front? No, this is the back side.
Okay.
You're right. So yeah, but no, you don't necessarily have to.
Okay.
Might be good too, but you don't have to. So if you look close, you know, there's no crisscross on that. It's actually pretty good. It's a nice cut. Okay, and so now we're gonna put this all together. I'm gonna move this aside.
So now we're just seeing that everything fits.
Yeah, well, we need to attach the window.
Oh yeah.
And then tomorrow, when do you want to put it all together?
I might have to do it Thursday because I have work until 2 and then I have class at 3 till 6.
Is that going to be okay, time-wise?
Yeah, I just want to get it out by Friday at the latest.
Okay. Alright, now I'm going to show linen tape, but I don't know if you would want to use it. It's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, doesn't that like kind of become part of it or whatever?
Yeah, it does. And it can stretch your paper
Ah.
a little bit. So now we're gonna put our window together. So it's a vertical piece, so we're gonna attach it at the top. So the window, you know, you want to attach it at the top. If it's vertical, do it on one of these hinges. If it's a horizontal piece, you want to attach it there. So we're gonna do it here. And again, this is why we have a nice clean space here. Now, this is when little scraps come in handy. So I have a scrap that we cut off this. I'm gonna slip that right there. And then I'm going to take a scrap of the mat and slip this underneath here. So if you put these together, and then I butt up this, and I butt this up together, they're now the same height. So you can see they're flush. Whereas if I were to try to tape this without these pieces together, this would be much further down, and then when I tape, it's gonna not be completely flush, and there might be a little bit of slack in there. This is some linen tape, and I've used it in the past. You can get some other types of tape. I would recommend, you know, getting, there's a kind with a silver foil that you peel off, and it's great. It's really adhesive. You can remove it well. I just don't have any. Linen tape is good, but it's water activated. So you would cut strips, as many strips as you need, and then you'd have a bowl of water with a sponge, and you just sponge the tape, and you kind of gently massage it to activate the glue, and then you can attach your strips. It's a little bit more messy, and it is more archival, and it holds up really well. We're just going to be using artist tape, as long as that's all right with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. It's not quite as tacky, and the worst thing that can happen is, it is acid free. The worst thing that can happen is, over time, your print might slip, and you might have to take it apart and put it back in. But that wouldn't happen, you know, if you make sure you have enough tape on your print, and as long as your paper is not like a really big paper, heavy stock paper, you know, something small. This is small to medium. I would say medium size print, you're gonna be okay. So I'm just going to attach one here.
I didn't know that was acid free.
Yeah, that's why it's so expensive.
Ah. Is the blue stuff acid free?
No. And one across, right in the middle. And it helps to have a bone folder. I have one at home, but or you can just take something smooth, run across.
What's a bone folder?
It's just a piece of bone that we use in paper, like book binding, and book making, things like that. Book arts. The mat. So the mat is done, right? The window is done. Now if you look here, check out at the bottom here. It's slightly, there's a little bit more excess here. If we need to trim that off, we can, but what we might want to do in the meantime is just kind of pull a little bit on the bottom, because over time it's going to settle where these two are meeting. Just like that. Okay. So let's see if this will fit in here. Perfect. Yeah, no problem. That's good.
So now I just need to varnish it?
What's that?
Now I just need to varnish it?
Yeah. I'll pause that. Okay, I went and got Charlie's print, and this isn't the actual print that's going to go in this window. Charlie's going to have to go and get that. But I'm just going to use this for demonstration purposes for now. The paper's too big for the size width mat that we cut. So Charlie's eventually going to have to cut a little bit off of the paper, off the top and off the bottom. The sides are fine, but you can see it's overhanging just slightly. So that's not a big deal, but so what I would do naturally is I would fold this over and line up my mat, my window with the image. Make sure that it's all lined up properly, and it will line up properly. It's just not until it's cut down, but I don't want to cut this down. So once you have that lined up well, you would fold this over, and I hand this to you, Charlie. And what I like to do is cut a few strips. So essentially what we're going to do is take something heavy, like our Terra bar, and I just lay it right across. Once it's lined up perfectly, just lay it across, and then that way I can manipulate this paper and it doesn't move. So it's lined up perfectly, and then I can take some tape and start cutting off little pieces, about 6-inch lengths. I'm going to need probably 6 pieces, 6 inches long. I like to cut them all at once and just have them here. So find something, some surface that you can kind of do this to. Okay, and then you're going to start with one piece and gently lift up as close to the edge of the artwork as possible. And so sticky side up, I'm actually taping the back side of the work, so you can see a little tab is left over here. And we do the same. If it's a large work, you might have to do it 3 times, just because of the weight. This tape is not as tacky as some of the other museum grade tapes. If it will stop in a minute. So lift up gently. And I'm not going to press down real hard because I don't want it all sticking out. Because this is not going to be permanent. I'm going to take this off as soon as I'm done. Close to the edge. I probably could have gotten that a little closer. And then take my opposite pieces. And so I'm not actually taping anything on the front of the artwork. All the tape is on the back side. Right along there, and then I fold this over. And then I do the same here, and do the same there, and then it's attached. Some people like to attach the bottom too, but it's not necessary. When I'm done with this, I can just take a razor blade and cut here, 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 and if it's linen tape, I would just leave the linen attached to the print. And that's it. The reason I don't use linen tape anymore is because the moisture sometimes buckles the paper and it shrinks the paper, and then I see the lines in my print. I hate that. So so that's it. And
Stop the
we
video.
will do, sure.